Joining us right now is California Congressman Darrell Issa. And Congressman, it is good to see you. Thanks very much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Maria. And I noticed you were paying tribute to the loss of the San Diego Chargers. You know, the Padres will not completely make up for the loss of a football team.
We still have them.
Well, we appreciate that from you, Congressman. Thank you. Let me ask you about President-elect Trump. Now he's admitting that Russia actually did have a part in the cyber attacks relating to the election. What should be the answer here? How should the new administration handle these hacking concerns from your standpoint?
Well, we have two answers. One, the cyber answer is we need to have a cybersecurity policy against Russia, China, and even some of our so-called allies who also are poking into systems, sometimes stealing commercial, sometimes looking at military. But Maria, it's 36 years in just a couple of days since Ronald Reagan was sworn in, and his statement about an evil empire still goes. Russia is, in fact, a dictatorship run by oligarchs, headed by Putin, that continue to use much of the same thuggery on their own people and on the United States and others, and we have to treat them accordingly. What worked in the 80s to change at least some of the behavior of the then Soviet Union, Jim Mattis knows some of that is going to have to be used again. We're going to have to meet them militarily where they're encroaching on other countries' sovereignty, and we're going to have to engage diplomatically, but we're going to have to engage based on the fact that they are an empire the size of a big part of the world, but economically the size of Italy.
Do you think Donald Trump understands that? I mean, would you like to see a different commentary, a different tone out of Donald Trump as it relates to this issue? It sort of feels like he's been pushed into a corner that he's always defending it.
Well, a man who wins an election against all odds, you don't ask him to change his style. But I think looking at and listening to Donald Trump now for a couple of years, I realize that he will tend to say the positive, or he will tend to go with something while listening for the realities. That goes for immigration, it goes for the selection of his cabinet. And so I take what he says consistent with the facts that his key advisors are giving him, and I know he's not going to ignore his key advisors, including General Mattis and others who universally, General Flynn and so on, they're going to be telling him, this is an evil empire. You have to deal with them the way Reagan dealt with Gorbachev. Engage them, yes, but also go toe-to-toe to make sure that they're not expanding.
So you, Congressman Issa, it's Dagan McDowell. So were you heartened by what you've heard in the past week from even the Secretary of State nominee Rex Tillerson as he talked about Russia, using a tougher tone than many people expected, but then also in particular General Mattis yesterday, where he did note there are a decreasing number of areas where we can engage cooperatively and an increasing number of areas in which we will have to confront Russia?
Well, I think that is exactly the right tone. The reality is they are not our friend in Syria, in Iraq, in Iran. They are not our friend or the friend of the Ukrainian people and many of the other Eastern Europeans that they're again trying to dominate. So I do believe that both the Secretary of State designate and the Secretary of Defense designate are setting the right tone, that they know Russia, they've spent their careers having to deal with the realities on the ground, but they also both know that one of Putin's adversaries was in fact murdered in front of the Kremlin, and somehow the cameras didn't work. That's a fact that we have to stick to, is that bad things happen if you don't get along with Putin.